Hi everyone, welcome to another 5 minutes of British literature to go with this week's reading. Let's talk about the influence of humanism on 16th century English literature. Humanism contains multitudes, but the common thread was the study and application of the Greek and Roman classics, especially those that pertain to rhetoric, ethics, and the reform of society or the individual. Contrary to older portrayals of the Renaissance, classical scholarship did not disappear during the Middle Ages only to be rediscovered at the dawn of the Renaissance. The classics were alive and well during the medieval period, especially in monastic houses and universities. What did change with the Renaissance was the availability and distribution of these texts. Printing presses meant that these texts could more easily circulate outside of the church and academia, as could the ideas within them. The audiences for these works tended to be men of means, aristocrats, civil servants, wealthy merchants, professionals. Therefore, a lot of the most widely read humanist works focused on how to create good men and emphasized education and the cultivation of personal virtue. During the 15th and 16th centuries, however, we see more humanist scholars and authors shift their focus to how to create good societies or good nations. Political philosophy could be a dicey exercise in this period. A humanist who was too radical in what he espoused risked running afoul of his monarch, the church, or other powerful figures. Moreover, many humanist authors were conservative themselves and valued certain traditions and institutions. Some authors took a very realistic and practical approach to political and social reform, which we can see in Machiavelli's The Prince. The common thread in Machiavelli's points is that the quality of a ruler should be judged by their fruits. Being a virtuous ruler is not enough if one's virtue leads to bad outcomes or a weakened regime. Alongside the realism of The Prince, we also see a more idealistic strain of humanism, in which virtue is of more consequence, and in which a society can be made more virtuous if one can change what it prioritizes and rewards. This humanism is famously explored in Thomas More's Utopia. Sir Thomas More wrote Utopia in two parts. He wrote Book 2 first in 1515, he wrote Book 1 the next year, and he published the work in Latin in 1516. The story is a mixture of fact and fiction. More really was friends with Peter Giles and Cardinal Morton, both of whom appear in the story. More was also struggling with whether to take a position on Henry VIII's council, and he was trying to decide whether he should go into the king's service or maintain his intellectual freedom as a private citizen. From there, the line between real and imaginary gets a bit murkier as we turn to Raphael Hythloday. Hythloday makes some pretty radical suggestions as he compares Europe to Utopia, a place for which he has seemingly boundless admiration. According to Hythloday, the Utopians have made their nation successful by purging pride, wealth, and private property from their society. More, the narrator, expresses a lot of skepticism of Hythloday's praise for Utopia, and he's careful to note where he thinks the Utopians' ways are misguided, impractical, or unchristian. At the same time, however, More tells Hythloday that Europe's princes could use a fresh perspective and an honest voice like his. And he encourages Hythloday to go into public service. One of the enduring critical questions of Utopia is this one. Is More serious, or is this some kind of satire? Perhaps the best answer to this question is a lot of both. Utopia may not be a blueprint for a perfect society, but it does give the reader the space and the inspiration to imagine what the world might look like if things were different in some key ways. If empathy were the basis of everyone's socialization, if labor and learning were more highly valued, if social prestige were not based on wealth and lineage. It allows the reader to step back and critique their society's traditions and institutions without committing to radical changes that they may not be prepared to embrace, or that may not be good ideas in the first place. There's a lot about the Utopia of More's book that is cringy, tyrannical, and unjust, despite the utopians' theoretical devotion to liberty and justice. However, rather than ask ourselves which parts of utopian society are actually ideal, perhaps we should take this no place as a springboard to a re-examination of our own values and norms from a different perspective. Thank you for watching, and remember that the PDF of Utopia on Georgia View contains my notes and questions that you can use in your reading.